Hello to all of you from around the world. I want to welcome you again to another beautiful edition of Soulivity Today, broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. Of course, my name is Brian Westley Johnson, and we have a fantastic show for you today. But before I get into today's show, I must introduce my amazing co-host for today, Teresa, Greco, and D'Angelo Thompson. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Since it's Monday, how was your weekend? Teresa, how was your weekend? What did you do?
It was wonderful. I got to catch up with my side of the family this weekend at the cottage. So, us Canadians and
Nice.
our cottage life. Yes, doing the long drive, to get there and the long drive home and tons of traffic. But it was beautiful to catch up. Thank you.
Nice. Always nice to be in the cottage in the woods. I miss my cottage days at living in Detroit. We'd go up into Canada and do the cottage thing. Now, D'Angelo, you did something fantastic over the weekend. I saw those Instagram posts. Can you tell people what you did? Yeah.
Very similar to Teresa. I went to a cottage in upstate New York, about 5 hours north, and on this beautiful lake. And my friend has a 2.5-mile island that has these cute little white cottages on it. And there's about 12 of us, and just connected with nature and heard the rain for 2 days. And it was a beautiful day on Sunday. So it was nice. It's beautiful.
So I'm the only one that didn't do the cottage life this weekend? I mean, gosh. Anyway, well, I'm glad you guys got the chance to do that. It's always a good thing to get out into nature and just kind of like relax and chill out. Let's get into today's show. Today is another wonderful Motivation Monday where we explore different stories to get you motivated for the week. And this week, we wanted to dive into something that is important for each of us to do. Healing is mostly regarded as something that we should undergo when suffering, specifically a physical injury to the body. But as we have discussed many times here on Soulivity, wounds come in many different forms. We often forget that the deep emotional wounds from trauma that are left without tender, loving care can lead to a life of continued self-induced pain and misery. It is a life of just day-to-day survival and plain getting by. Well, for today's Motivational Monday, we have a very special guest, and she is a very welcome light into this world who brings deep healing to all through her work as a somatic trauma healer. Ife Mora's mission is to help people heal the trauma stored in their bodies and nervous systems, enabling them to release stress, self-regulate, build resiliency, feel safer, happier, and more hopeful. She strives to help people connect with their authentic selves and access their body's innate ability to heal itself. Ife, I am just blown away that you're here again. You've been on Soulivity before, and I'm so glad you're back being here with us again, talking about this work that you're doing that is so important.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having me again. I'm back. Absolutely. There's nothing more that I like talking about than healing people and healing yourself and finding that internal source of healing that we all carry and embody and have been born with, and being able to tap into that, to your healing potential. So yes, thank you so much for having me. Good
Absolutely,
morning.
absolutely. I like to make, when we're talking about something like this, I really like to make it personal to ourselves. So, even the co-hosts, if you have personal anecdotes around your own healing journey, please bring that in. Ife, what was your healing journey? I mean, what brought you into this space of giving this beautiful gift of somatic, trauma healing that we'll talk about. We'll get into the details of that a little bit later. But what was your journey to this point?
Sure. And also, good morning, Teresa and D'Angelo. Happy to be having this conversation with you all this morning. So, I'm a trauma survivor myself. Brian, I always forget that we're both from Detroit. So, born and raised in Detroit, and Detroit, fabulous for culture, and arts, and so much American history. I also grew in the time where Detroit was murder capital of the United States, and experienced a lot of violence growing up there, which created a lot of trauma. And in the world of trauma, we would call that developmental trauma. Um, and there was a point where I could no longer have a kind of normal, um, physiological kind of wellness, meaning that I was not what Dan Siegel or many people that we talk about this window of tolerance. There's a concept about if we can be in this window of tolerance of a rhythm, normal flows, and a little bit of arousal, a little bit of down in that window of tolerance, we are able to live a very healthy life. I was no longer able to be in that window of tolerance. I had gone into what we call the survival physiology of freeze and could no longer function. And so I sought help. And I realized that the normal, conventional, kind of top down processing methods of um,
Hang on, guys. We've got a quick, we got with Ife, we're having a little bit of difficulty with Ife's mic. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to try to fix that, and we'll be right back, okay? Soulivity Today is brought to you by Happy Travelers Tours and Old Vine Wine Tours. Find all of the Satana products at our Go shop at go.soulivity.com.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us, a place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
Would you like to be one of the first people to experience mental freedom? Mental freedom is a coaching practice with 6 core principles: improving hope, self-efficacy, optimism, resilience, and general well-being. Mental freedom only takes 6 sessions. It is designed to give you the tools you need to help yourself. It can help with any situation: relationship problems, past trauma, career decisions, parenting challenges, addiction, and mental health concerns. Incorporating the mental freedom framework into your life will deliver an approach to master any situation and a pathway toward achieving inner peace. Mental freedom provides the information and tools that you need to grow and be bigger than anything that ever happens to you. So if you're looking for one-on-one or a group coaching program that will allow you to address any situation that comes up in your life with practical tools to give you more peace and joy, then join the Mental Freedom Program in Soulivity's Aspire Academy. There are very limited spots available, so don't delay. I hope to see you there.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Are you ready to take that first step towards true, unwavering inner happiness? Are you like thousands of people who have everything they need, not want, but need, and still can't seem to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? It isn't found in our external environment, but within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we will explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices. And together, we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. So I invite you to join me each week on Soulivity TV on the Steps to Happiness show with me, Teresa Greco.
Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. And we're back with more of Soulivity Today. We finally got our audio issue fixed with Ife Mora. Hey, Ife. I know
Hey,
things
yes.
happen. Things happen. Things happen when
Yeah.
we're, having fun. So live streams do have their difficulties sometimes. But we're going to just move through this. You were talking about your healing journey, and I think uh, I think things started to go a little haywire right in the middle of that. So if you can kind of talk a little bit about that again.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had realized that I wasn't able to really function in the way that I was functioning before. And
Yeah.
my physiology had gone into a kind of freeze immobilized state. And I was having trouble kind of moving out of it, being active, uh, achieving my goals, doing the kind of day to day things that were healthy for me. And I went to seek help. And I was saying that while conventional therapy, talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy is really important, and there's so many wonderful ways where it has its healing place. It's all kind of if working in the kind of prefrontal cortex, and
Right.
we what talking about the body going into a immobilized state. We have to address bottom up processing. We have to address the body. We have to go into a kind of somatic approach of healing. And I was introduced to this wonderful somatic healer, and Julie Fernandez, and she started talking to me about survival physiology and being in a freeze state and coming out of it, mobilizing out of it. And it just really opened my world to the possibility of, wow, how can we as human beings live a better quality of life,
Right.
right?
Right.
How are we able to really live up to our optimal fullest potential of health? And we can do that by understanding and learning how to be embodied, approaching
Mm,
healing from this body oriented space,
mm.
getting out of our minds and going into our bodies, or what I like to say, using our minds to go into our bodies. And um, so it just really opens me up so much. And I was a musician, singer, songwriter, and I also have been a practicing Buddhist for all of my life, and
Yeah.
in the Buddhist practice, an educator and counselor, spiritual counselor. So I wanted to get into this the wonderful arts, healing arts of somatic work, and so I started learning, and my main modality is somatic experiencing, that was developed by Dr. Peter Levine.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's the practice developed with somatic experiencing. Most people know it, polyvagal theory. So I use a lot of both of these modalities and integrate that with Buddhist spiritual traditions and practices, and also very recently more kind of shamanic practices from Latin America, and integrating all these neurobiological practices with these more ancient of healing. And they're just the mix between all three of them are just so beautiful, and I see so much success in science. It's really wonderful. So the mission has become to just heal one person at a time.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I know, D'Angelo, you've known Ife for a long time, and so I'm going to hand it over to you for a question.
Yes, when I met Ife, it was about 5 years ago, Ife, now, and I can honestly say, just meeting you on that one occasion at the photo shoot, I was like, I felt like I met my sister, you know? Your energy in itself was very calming, very nurturing, very loving, very Earth Mother, Taurus, power Taurus, you know?
Yes.
Um, so I just wanted to say that. But about somatic experiencing, I did a few sessions with you, and a lot of it has to do with our breathing, right? And how we interpret things that are going on in our lives. How do you, I'm trying to get this question. I had a friend that's experiencing her mother with Alzheimer's, right? And her
Mm,
father passed away a few years ago. And a lot of her trauma from the past is coming up. Just in conversation, she'll just start crying because she'll remember past trauma. how can one start the process of somatic experiencing healing?
Sure. So thank you for that question, D'Angelo. And yes, you are my Taurian brother, my soul brother. So, trauma, so in all the research that these wonderful trauma psychiatrists and researchers and psychologists have done, and psychotherapists, we know that trauma is not what happens. It's not in it's the trauma is not the thing that happens to you. Trauma is what happens as a result of an experience that you've had that triggered your survival physiology into fight,
Hmm.
flight, and then that activation was not discharged from your nervous system properly.
Right.
So when we
Hmm.
discharge, we want to see a kind of shaking, a kind of um, moving out with a kind of the body going into this kind of huge reaction, crying and stomach, and the, as we saw, the activation of that event is that trigger, that survival physiology is leaving the body, and we can pretty much assess that this will not carry around this trauma from this event because they were able to discharge it. So going back to your question, I think
Hmm.
that so reality somatic experience, we have a wonderful website, traumahealing.org. And on that website, you can find somatic experiencing practitioners all over the world internationally to work with. And a
Mm.
lot of us work via Zoom, telehealth. And I think that, and there's wonderful books by Levine that you can buy. There's beautiful audiobooks that he can guide you through somatic experiencing visualization exercises and practices to get started. And I always give these tools to my clients. Sometimes we don't always have the resources to see our somatic practitioner every week. So there are a lot of supplemental material that we can use in between sessions or even just to get started with.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wow. Teresa, you had a question?
Yes, thank you so much for being on the show with us this morning, Ife. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
My question is that as of late, I'm seeing a lot of videos where people are speaking out about the fact that we don't need, years and years of maybe traditional therapy, where it really has people going deep into like those events that were upsetting to them and talking about them like over and over and over again. That as of late, some research has been coming out that that's not all that effective, and that doing or participating in a healing practice like yours, which I can speak to personally, that I'm a Reiki master. And so I feel like it very much ties into this, kind of upset on an energetic level, which, manifests and shows up totally differently from even what we could cognitively understand. Um, and so I'm just wondering if you're familiar with any of that research, and how your modality might be able to assist in what we're recently learning about how we can deal with trauma.
Mm. Question.
Yeah, absolutely, Teresa. So Dr. Vander Kolk and other wonderful trauma have talked about how, the title of his book, The Body Keeps the Score. So when we are dealing with stress, that a lot of people, when they grow up experiencing traumatic events that are not properly discharged from their nervous system, that stress starts to create difficulties and ailments in the body. Um, when we and go into past experiences that our brain doesn't realize that we're not currently experiencing in the moment, our brains and our bodies, our guts start to release all of these chemicals, right? Adrenaline and cortisol, preparing our bodies for fight, flight, or freeze. And what happens is that a lot of energy starts coming from the immune system and from the sexual organs and from all these different systems in our body. And it puts all this energy into our muscular skeletal system, preparing our bodies to protect ourselves, embrace ourselves. So if that is not released from our bodies hold on to that in a braced position, preparing to protect ourselves. And we notice that within the shoulders and the neck, the tightness that we hold in our chest and our backs. And that begins to create problems in the body. Right? It begins to create a kind of what we call syndromal physiology, where we create in the body because our bodies cannot rest and our bodies can't go kind of a homeostasis and equilibrium. It can't go back to a kind of resting that revitalizes us. And so when we're holding on to that very unconsciously, these type of normal practices of what we top-down processing as effective. I think that they help the client and help the individual when the individual needs to just kind of be listened to, heard, seen, and then the therapist or the practitioner can be there holding space for the person who's in healing. But which is very important, right? But when we're talking about actually healing that moment in time where someone experienced something that was so overwhelming for their system, that happens too fast, too soon for their system to process. They held on to it unconsciously. Their bodies held consciously, goes into the fibers of the body, muscles. We need a kind of embodiment to then allow that person to discharge. A lot of times what happens with traditional therapy is that if the person goes into the narrative, it can be re-traumatizing. And in the neurobiological approaches of healing, somatic experiencing, polyvagal theory, we don't need the narrative. We only need the narrative if it's important for the individual, if it's important for the person to share. We can hold the narrative for them. And sometimes it's very important to gain trust, because you need that trust to be in the resonance with the person that you're working with, that shared trust to help for you to guide them back to their bodies. So the research is showing this. The research is showing that in order to kind of heal these prolonged stressors, live in our bodies, that inhabit our body, don't allow us to feel safe in our bodies, right? So that's the main thing that we're looking for, is how can we go into our bodies and create a safe container from our bodies and allow us to feel safe inhabiting our bodies again. Trauma pushes you out of your bodies. It pushes you in a kind of frozen moment in time, that you live and relive these moments in time over and over and over again in your memories and in your mind. So we want to get you back into your bodies, feeling safe, inhabiting your bodies again. And once you're there, you're able to kind of tap into what we call, Peter Levine calls, that healing vortex, that counter vortex to that trauma vortex that is constantly disrupting our lives. And Reiki, Teresa Reiki, and you share my mother's name, so every time I say your name, my heart is just kind of opening, expanding. Yeah, so Reiki is such a beautiful practice of energy. I've definitely had a lot of Reiki done, and so healing, and a lot of Reiki practitioners, I have been trained with them in these practices as well, because you start realizing that, oh, I want to integrate more of a kind of neurobiological approach of healing and integrate into my wonderful practice that I already practice. So Reiki is also so wonderful for healing the body, but I think that when we can start integrating these neurobiological practices where what we call build coherence in the brain and coherence from the brain to the body,
Right.
that starts to do the healing work, right? Because when we think about it from a physiological perspective, our bodies are actually sending out more messages to our bodies. So if we can let our bodies know that what we are safe, right? If the body feels safe, then the brain will feel safe. And the brain will
Mhm.
start building more coherence and then building coherence with the body. And so everything's working together in this beautiful, coherent way that allows for healing to happen.
Wow. Um, Ife, when I was listening to you answer Teresa's question, I couldn't help but remember some of the words that I grew up with around, because we supported each other as a family to go through the process of healing trauma, and that continually to do it, right? It's something that it's part of your experience. Things are going to pop up every once in a while. You need to be able to have a practice of healing so that you can take care of that. I think a lot of people don't understand that what we've experienced in the past, when we think about it in the present moment, that our mind and body don't know the difference because we're reliving it all over again. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and and through that, can you kind of take us through what would be maybe a session with you, just virtually, like a session with you through going through a somatic uh, um, experience?
Sure. So I think it's how fortunate of for you to be able to grow up like that, Brian. Right. So
Um,
most of
yeah,
us don't have that privilege of growing up knowing that we have to have this kind of spiritual or kind of um, mental practice of of handling stress in life. And while I grew up Buddhist, and I always say this, that you can't really heal just with a spiritual practice, and you can't really
right,
heal just with a mental practice.
right,
It
right.
actually has to be a question of aligning yourself with a beautiful spiritual practice, healing your spirit, healing your nervous system, and healing your mind body connection. So, all
Yeah.
kind of four need to be connected in order for healing to
Amen to
take
that.
place.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So, I like to bring in Buddhism, and in Buddhism, we talk about how we're born into a world of suffering. And how
Mhm.
that translates to everyday life is that we're going to deal with stressors living in these type of societies. And anyway, as mammals, we because research Peter Levitch looked at the way animals are behave in the wild and how they're able to move out of stressful situations where they're being hunted by predators and move into survival physiology to survive and then be able to shake off and discharge their that activation and then go on with normal life. And how human beings or domesticated animals are not able to have that same type of cycle, fight, flight, freeze, and discharge, going back into a homeostasis cycle. So he looked at that research and realized that as human beings can move through this cycle and be guided to move through this cycle, then they're able to heal that trauma that they live in, that
Mhm.
the brain thinks it's still happening to them, and and the bodies are actually synced up, believing that it's still actually happening, or then maybe it had already happened in the past. So we have a hard time being able to let the past go. Um, so a normal session with me would always introduce this idea of how we're born into this world of suffering. This is inevitable. We will have stressors in life. But the thing we want to know and realize is that we have to be able to create a daily practice of embodiment, where we are taught how to live in our bodies. And for example, as I say that, I am feeling openness and expansiveness in my chest because
Mm.
I am in this field and this resonance with you, Brian, you, Teresa, and you, D'Angelo. And I'm feeling this
Mhm.
warmth and this support and this kind of love and this shared desire for healing humanity. And that is just gives me so much life and
Mm.
I and I and and I kind of
Wow.
like lively kind of awakened feeling in my limbs and my brain and my head kind of feels open and expansive. And if I kind of slightly close my eyes for a moment, I see shades of pinks and whites and yellows.
Mm.
Allow me
Wow.
to know, and the world of polyvagal theory allows me to know that I'm a vagal, which means I'm in this kind of bliss state, this flow state, this social engagement state, which is a very, very healing state to be in. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so
Wow.
I like to introduce my clients to this kind of world of embodiment through that way and teach them how to inhabit their bodies. And I teach them how to speak the language of the body and nervous system, which are sensations, the sensations words, and to have an awareness of a kind of interoception, meaning internal perception of what they are experiencing internally. And we go through it. And we might start with just tapping on the arms or the limbs and the body, just to kind of wake up the body with an awareness of, oh, this is my body. These are my arms. These are my legs. Because you would be surprised about how many people are not aware of their own bodies.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. And when we start talking about sensations, people have a hard time differentiating feelings from actual sensations in the body. And so, sensations, I mean, it feels tingly, it feels bubbly, it feels prickly, tense, constricted, restricted, alive. And once we can start tapping into understanding and tracking sensations in the body, we create an awareness to the body. And the body responds in a very positive way. The body wants to be seen, the body wants to be
Yeah.
recognized. Creating the awareness alone to the body be that healing, we're able to start tapping into that counter, that healing vortex, that the movement to start discharging that prolonged stress, that trauma, that activation out of the body. So I just
Mm.
simply start because this work has to be very gentle. We never
Yeah.
want to re-traumatize anyone. So we go in a very gentle way. And sometimes it kind of can feel a little bit too gentle for people at first, like, oh, I want to get into the thick of it. But we practitioners have to be very careful about that because re-traumatizing a person means that this person will leave our session and feel terrible for that whole week until they see us again. So
Oh. Wow.
the work has to be, I am going to resource you so you leave feeling a little bit more hopeful. You leave
Wow.
orienting a little bit more, not to the threat, but to something positive and wellness and goodness in your environment and inside of
Wow.
yourself. Right. So
Mm.
I'm going to leave this session with you. You're going to leave this session with me feeling seen, supported, but your body will start feeling a little bit more present and you'll start feeling a little bit more connected to your body. And we use that, Peter Levine uses a word called titration. So just little by little titrating and activating a little bit of that trauma vortex so then we can activate counter healing vortex to allow that movement to happen. And within that movement, the healing occurs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
I'll go to you, D'Angelo.
Wow. It's just a lot of information. And I suggest people reach out to Ife and just have a session because just the few that I did when I lived in LA, it was really amazing. And even though I stopped Ife, it was very helpful. I just want you to know that. And I've also seen other healers where they've said, okay, D'Angelo, you have to focus on your center core, your center chakra, around your heart, basically. Um, So there's a connection. There's a connection to everything we experience, right? Um, Basically, I just want to say thank you. I'm glad that you were led to
Aw.
this healing journey because you're helping many. And I know you have retreats. You just had a retreat in Mexico. How did that go?
Yes, I did. It was my first international retreat, which the goal is actually just to keep it in Mexico. And I take the idea of retreats from, I separated it from tourism. My father is from Mexico. My grandfather is Purépecha, and from Michoacan. And so I like to, what I call, bridge the gap between the United States and Mexico. There's a lot of fear about Mexico, but Mexico is such a
Hmm.
beautiful, wonderful culture that is rich in history, that has preserved its indigenous practices and people. And
Hmm.
I connected with this wonderful healer there who introduced me to different shamans and healers. And so I took a group of women there, worked also with a group of women there as well, brought them together. And daily we did somatic work. We also did the kind of more traditional ceremonial practices, um, cacao ceremony, temazcal ceremony, daily practices of yoga, and just kind of integrating everything together. The purpose
Beautiful.
was to heal the sacred feminine, right? So as we
Yes.
live in society as women, or women who identifying gender women, we are constantly kind of under this oppression of patriarchy, and it really diminishes who we are as women.
Hmm.
And so we need to heal that part of ourselves as well, which we don't talk about a lot. This kind of, I talk a lot about racialized trauma, but there's also patriarchal trauma that lives inside of our bodies as women. And we see a lot
Yes.
of the response to that as what we call the fawn response. And so as women, we have this tendency to fawn, and that shows up by being too nice, people pleasing,
Mm.
forgetting about our own needs and being in
Mhm.
service of others. And this leads to our demise and a decline in our health. And so remembering our this divine sacred feminine, to that power, and really empower ourselves, it really allows the body of a woman to heal. And so that was my objective and my purpose. So we all had these incredible,
Beautiful.
amazing transformations while we were there. Everyone came back completely transformed, and still weeks later, we're all still carrying around, because I was also doing my healing work there. We're still
Mm.
carrying around this light and this healing. So the goal now is, I have another one coming up in March 2024, and the goal is to do at least 3 of these a year, where I'm taking a group of women to Mexico. So we did it in Quintana Roo, and the adjacent to the Yucatan. Um, we were in the jungle a lot, working in a part of Playa del Carmen called Sac Bay. It's this beautiful conservationist community living in the jungle with families and healers and cenotes and ancient
Wow.
spirits, and using all of this, and the beautiful healers using all of this to really connect with and allow us to heal. So that went really well, and thank you for bringing that up, D'Angelo. And I wanted to say, with us doing our sessions together, D'Angelo, what I notice is that sometimes people only need 3 or 4 sessions with me,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Hmm.
Because,
Okay.
you know, they were able to work through something, discharge something, open something up, clear those blocks, and maybe need it
Yeah.
for now.
Yeah. I
Wow.
agree.
Some people come back to me 6 months later as a little bit of a refresher. So we notice
Hmm.
that in somatic work, we're powered back to the person, to the individual. So we
Right.
don't allow our clients to have this kind of placebo relationship with us, where using us as their power. We're giving that power and showing that power back to them. So sometimes it only takes 3, 4, 5 sessions,
Hmm.
and for a while, and they
Wow.
Wow.
maybe
It's kind
move
of like
that
what Teresa.
grace. Yeah, go
Mhm.
ahead. Yeah, D'Angelo.
Oh, I thought, okay. Yeah, I was just saying, you're kind of like my bat phone. So if I ever need it, I know who to call. When I need it again, I know who to call.
Oh
Absolutely.
man, Teresa, I'll let you have the final question.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted also to point out that perhaps people could seek out a therapy like this when they just have some kind of dis-ease in the body,
Hmm.
as you know, you kind of, when you shared your story, you just felt that, you know, you just weren't living your best life, your optimum self, and that if it doesn't necessarily have to be where you have, you know, some kind of traumatic event in your mind that you want to work through, because I think that sometimes counseling and therapy and these type of modalities can be scary for people because they want to have their skeletons in the closet or under the rug, and numbing it out with, you know, various substances and activities, because there's a lot of fear around going there. And so I think that, you know, in some cases, if there are unsolved issues in the body, like various illnesses or ailments that you're suffering with, and you know, doctors can't figure it out, and perhaps, you know, you've been on medication but you'd like to come off it, that these alternative therapies can be the solution for you, if you know that it doesn't have to be about, you know, only wanting to resolve the trauma, because you may not be cognitive of it. You may or may not. So I know that,
Okay.
you know, if you're not, your body is still holding on to it and storing it. And that this could be one of the ways of being able just to really live your optimum self, where you're not having that sense of dis-ease in the body.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yes, absolutely, Teresa. And that's so beautifully said and put. We talk a lot about, well, first, let me say that I do have clients that come to me and they say, well, I don't have any trauma, right? But so that's why when we talk about, and Brian, you laugh because honestly, I know there's so much trauma. There's medical trauma, racialized historical
Mhm.
trauma.
Mhm.
There's so many different types of trauma, secondary trauma. So maybe we didn't do it ourselves, but we selves go through it. There's climate catastrophe trauma.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many different types of trauma that can
Mhm.
potentially get kind of stored in our bodies and nervous systems that just kind of stick around, causing so much, wreaking havoc and causing so much damage for years. And so I say, okay, there's no trauma, but tell me your symptoms. And so that's why we always talk about prolonged stress as well, because if there's an accumulation of stress, it will respond in the body physiologically in very similar ways as trauma. And
Mhm.
so people come to me and they have anxiety or depression, and they've been diagnosed with this and diagnosed with that. And while it's always important to see your doctor and work with your doctor, I do believe that we pathologize too much in this society. And I do that the pharmaceutical industry profit off of our kind of these over diagnoses that we're receiving. And I don't believe
Mhm.
I really
Yeah.
don't, because our bodies can get dependent on chemicals, and we get stuck in this identification of something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
Mhm.
ill,
Mhm.
as opposed to, oh wow, I have this kind of what we say hyper arousal and hypo arousal on or stuck off, and I can't quite seem to self regulate. And this work helps people to release that prolonged stress and trauma from their bodies and homes, build resilience, so build
Mhm.
capacity to be able to deal with new stressors that are coming into your life constantly, and also to within that co-regulate people and mammals, so allowing other people who are more regulated to have a positive effect on you, and also do that on your own self regulation. So we also work with like what is called syndromeology. So a lot of this kind of these non-traumas or prolonged stress or capital T traumas, little t traumas that we're dealing with that are stored in our bodies and nervous systems will begin to, as I said before, wreak havoc on our physiology, our biology, and start creating these syndromes. So for myself, I was diagnosed with something called intercystitis. And it is a kind of syndrome, and we would include it in that list of syndromal physiology. It's a very painful syndrome that appears in the kind of bladder, the pelvic floor. Um, I went to my doctor and they really didn't have any answers for me. I went to my OBGYN nurse. I went to the urologist, no answers. And the only answers they had were very invasive, painful procedures that were temporary, that temporarily worked after you went through a great deal of pain. So I have a lot of medical trauma. And the last thing I wanted to do was go through even more medical trauma to solve something that actually wasn't going to fix the problem anyway.
Wow.
And so I start working with my somatic experiencing practitioner because we always have to continue doing the work so we can show up for things regulated and healthy. And I started doing the work. And so what I start seeing as I went into my physiology and connected with those areas that were and that were hurting and that were inflamed, right? Because prolonged stress and trauma, the main thing it causes is inflammation. And that
Mm.
inflammation is the thing that wreaks havoc. These different parts of our bodies, and then we go to the doctor and they just can't explain it. It's inflammation. So how do we reduce the inflammation? How do we reduce the symptoms? So many
Yeah.
different practices are together are wonderful. So for me, I started working with my partner, getting into where's the trauma being behind that interstitial cystitis. Where's the trauma that happened? It was medical trauma. It came from
Mhm.
almost actually a near-death experience for myself with my son, my second pregnancy. I almost died because I had pneumonia, and it basically almost killed my son and myself. And so the delivery, even though I was supposed to go through a wonderful water birth with my midwife, ended in a cesarean and and a loss of extreme blood afterwards and almost dying. So
Wow.
it was a medical trauma that had not been recognized by conventional medicine, but that I had to do my own research to find alternative, Teresa, like you said, find alternative ways of healing. And so with my SCP, Danielle Murphy, I'm going to give her a little shout out because she's wonderful, mentor, teacher, and also my SCP, my healer. We were able to really start getting into that the activation, the stored trauma that existed in the pelvic floor and working through that. And when I tell you,
Mm.
my symptoms have been reduced significantly. So this is not a cure, right? So we're not looking for the cure, but we're looking for a better quality of life. We're
Life. Right.
looking for a reduction of symptoms. We're
Right.
looking for how can I manage this? How can I
Right.
go out and live a better quality of life where this is not always plaguing me? And if they come up, they
Wow.
come up, and I know how to deal with it, and I know how to manage it, and I know how to treat it. And so I do every day a practice of embodiment and going into my body and having conversations with my body.
Mm.
Hello, pelvic bladder. Hello, uterus. Hello,
Right.
what can I do for you today? How can I assist you? I see you. Guide me to heal you. I am here for you. I forgive you. I love you. And I have that
Wow.
conversation with parts of my body that need that to be seen and heard and listened to. And as I go in there and I feel what that part of my body wants me to feel, because pain is just an indicator. It's
Right.
just a guide, right? So we have to get
Right.
out of this pattern of hating our bodies because they're sick and they're ill, but
Right.
actually embracing our bodies and accepting that what it's trying to do is just show us, lead us back to this place where it needs attention and
Mm.
forgiveness of, as
Wow.
opposed to I hate you because you're not only to live the life I want to live,
Right.
but surrendering to it and saying, I embrace you and I love you and I'm here and we're going to get better. And when a
Well,
person can begin doing that and having these kind of daily conversations with their bodies, their
Mhm.
symptoms reduce dramatically, significantly.
wow. Ife, we could just go forever with you. You know that? Because everything that you're talking about is so important. I mean, and I think we're just coming into this generation where we're more aware of this perspective of healing and giving ourselves the self-care and taking care of ourselves by healing and maintaining the pain and the stress and the anxiety that comes from trauma in our life. I know we're a little bit over time, but really quickly, where can people find more information about you?
Sure. So they can find me through my website, ifemora.com. I do 30-minute free consultations. So get in touch with me, or you can DM me. Instagram, ife.mora is my handle. And reach out. Let's have a conversation. I am open. I am here for people. Um, my mission is one person at a time, if that's what it takes. I'm in LA, so I also do I do monthly workshops and retreats, and you can also hire me to come out and train and do trauma informed training for your group, for your work group, for you and your employees. I also do that work. I work and movement called Healing Justice with a nonprofit organizations that are social justice and abolitionist based. And I work with families. And so these organizations bring me out to do a lot of trauma informed education or work in a kind of healing for these activists who are on the front lines doing this really intense, heavy work. So I'm around, and thank you so much, Brian, Teresa, and D'Angelo for having me. This
Oh,
conversation has been
absolutely.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Guys, listen, thank you so much for being here with us. What a powerful show.
Yes. You're doing great,
What a
Dave.
powerful, exactly. A great way to end our show. Listen, everyone out there, we appreciate you being with us today. Thank you, D'Angelo. Thank you, Teresa. And again, thank you, Ife, for giving us such important information to make our lives better. Listen, we're almost out of time. Just want to say, listen, we're glad that you came and joined us here for another edition of Soulivity Today. Come back and join us weekdays at 8 a.m. Eastern for our regular show. Or you can watch us and listen to us at KMET 1490 AM, weekdays at 8 a.m. Pacific time for all of you guys on the West Coast. Until next time, keep living your life with passion and purpose to create a life full of high quality living today. We'll see you next time.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has expressed